We are here. Attendees are coming in. I know. So I started getting Slack messages, and Randy Murphy from Cal Baptist texts me and says, "Hey, you're late to your own webinar." I mean, what is going? See, this is higher ed, everybody. The fires that we put out all the time. So I know we're going to let people come in. So the best part is I started using the Zoom events platform for this for the first time. We're going to start doing a big webinar series in the future, kind of just talking about issues, things that mean something to us. And I'm proud to have this first one. And the funny thing is like, I had it set up. I've been sitting on this backstage for an hour. I was this nervous about it. I'm like, okay, I've got it. I practiced screen sharing so I could bring the title slide up. And then we're sitting here, John, Brad, and I are in the background. We're in the backstage for 10 minutes, just chatting. I'm like, oh, it's top of the hour. Let's hit it. Hit the go start button and boom, there's nothing happens. I got to restart my computer. This is higher ed. By definition, this is higher ed. Okay. We deal with fires all the time. So that was, I probably did the fastest restart of a computer I probably could have done. So I think that was pretty good. But I think it's funny because it's like, God got a sense of humor because, in what other way could we have something about supply chain and I have to start it late? Okay. I mean, like, it's very poetic in that way. So we're going to have a great conversation, a couple of housekeeping things for everybody. One, this is being recorded, so make sure you send it to 100 of your closest friends after it's done. But we are using the events webinar platform. So I see that there are attendees on, but you will please use the Q&A button at the bottom if you want to ask a question during this, and make sure that, or you can use the chat. We'll try to keep an eye on the chat. But really, for asking us questions, please use the Q&A at the bottom. We're going to start with a little bit of a conversation. We're going to talk about supply chain as a whole. We're going to talk about what Crestron is doing with it, and all of that. But with no further ado, I'm going to just have our guests introduce themselves. So, Brad, welcome to Higher Ed AV. Please tell people who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you, Joe. I'm very happy to be here. I know this is a really great community to be a part of. I've spoken with some of you at Masters. Joe and I spent some time at Masters, and so I always loved speaking with schools and those of you really making all of this technology work in higher ed. So I'm Brad Hintze. I'm I'm EVP Global Marketing at Crestron. I always stumble on my own title for some reason, but I'm really glad to be here today.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to this conversation. It's neat when I asked John about doing this, and he's like, well, do you want to get Brad? I'm like, wait, that person has a vice president title and they want to come talk to our vertical. So thank you very much. We've had great conversations in the past, and it's an honor to have you join and come right out and talk to our community. So that's awesome. And next up, everyone in higher ed vertical knows this next man. So pretend that we don't, and please tell everyone who you are and what you do, John.
Well, Joe, thanks for having us again. And I'm John Hulen. My role with Crestron is to work with the EDU market, the education vertical market, and just share our trends and stories and what's going on. All the new things coming out, as the innovations, as well as the way people are looking at educating 21st century students. But for 8 years, I worked directly with colleges, universities, and even K through 12 districts in the Midwestern US. So, 5 or 6 states, and then even for a while, all 14 states that make up the Midwest for Crestron. So I have had the pleasure to meet a lot of people in the higher ed AV group and the HETMA group, and just see a lot of people last week at CCUMC, which was awesome. So,
yeah, no, I've definitely, thank you very much. I feel like I've definitely had overload, but there's never gonna get an overload of John Hulen. Like, it's like, I think we're just traveling around the world together. Where are we going next? Yeah. But no, thank you so much for coming on. And I think this is really a great opportunity. And let me set the stage. And, I know that in case anyone hasn't heard yet, some of the listeners, there's a global supply chain issue going on. In case you haven't heard, um, and the thing is the conversations I'm having is that this isn't an AV issue. It's not even a Crestron issue. It impacts us because, people can't, but, I had a house fire a year and a half ago where we had to rebuild. And you imagine this, I saw how this went through an entire global landscape, from the doors and gates we had to get to electronics for a house. Like, this came across the globe, and I saw it and felt it. And then I start seeing, us in higher ed go, oh, I got to still get my projects done. And maybe this is the difference. We have dates where we have to start, a ribbon cutting's a ribbon cutting, right? And you have to get there. So Brad, I'm going to start with you. Talk, not necessarily, we'll get to Crestron in a bit, but talk about how you guys as a manufacturer have felt the global supply chain hit you all.
Now, Joe, I thought it was only Crestron that was having issues with supply chain. That's what we hear frequently. No, as a manufacturer, I think I think the whole world clearly has been on a wild ride over the pandemic. So many parts of our lives have been fundamentally changed as we have tried to navigate through all of this. As a manufacturer, we went through a very strange cycle too, where immediately after the lockdown started, and everybody started to send employees away from the office and to their homes, our business was impacted in two different ways. And I think this is partly unique to Crestron in that we do have a business that's focused on residential, and then a big business that's focused on commercial. On the commercial side of the house, immediately everybody was slowing down what their plans and what they're doing, right? If you're not in the office, what are you going to install? Plus, there was also that uncertainty of what will I need when we come out of this, and how long is this going to last? While on the other side of the business, the residential side, there was a brief pause as people were trying to get settled in at their homes, but immediately people then said, "Hey, I'm living and I'm working in my home. I want my home to be my place." And so we saw incredible demand growing in the residential market too. And then after people started to get their back to work plans and really got settled into it, then the commercial side started taking off. And so that demand change in our business and as a manufacturer really impacts, well, how do you plan, right? How do you plan for the inventory you need? How do you plan for burning off the inventory that you have so you can turn it into cash and build more great products and continue to invest in the business? And so there's so many factors were really impacting the way we run our business. And where typically in the past, we've been through cycles where we saw demand that was extraordinarily higher than we had prepared for. And the global supply chain had been built in a way that you could, in some cases, ramp up product development, product manufacturing, and respond to spikes in demand a little more easily. Not always seamlessly, but a little more easily because there was inventory in that chain. But as the whole world started to wake up again and started to consume electronic components and manage through the shift in demand that happened as people were brought into their homes, because we all saw it, right? People are locked into their homes. The demand on different kinds of goods really skyrocketed. Peloton and computers and personal webcams and all kinds of ways, and like Amazon and toilet paper and, all this thing. It's so crazy to think that was 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, that we were navigating all of that. But that demand shift really had that impact on the global supply chain. And so we were trying to understand, what do we need to build for? How quickly can we get it? And how do we make the right plans? All the while, our suppliers are all doing the same thing, and then struggling to meet on our needs on a consistent basis like we had grown accustomed to.
Yeah, and you brought something up about, how all of your suppliers, and I think that what a lot of people don't recognize, just when it comes to global supply chain, is that it's not just, I mean, you don't just go into Jersey and go down Volvo Street there and think that every single part is made there, right? You're relying on other people
Mhm.
down the line as well who are facing those challenges. Um, so with that, and as other things I've heard is even those people are basically lying to everyone else further down the chain, right? And so you've got a lie upon a lie upon a lie of how far things are coming, and then you've got sales guys, which John, I'm going to flip to you now. You've got sales guys on our back end, chats and our HEPMA channel. We're hearing, well, my sales guy said it was going to be 40 weeks for this. Well, I was told it was 42. Well, I'm hearing it's 50 something. And these other things you're hearing. So how have you navigated that? How can we navigate it? And flat out, what's the truth?
I think the truth is that we have a huge spectrum of lead times, actually, depending on how complex the product is and depending on, to Brad's point, what raw materials we had in already or can get quickly. So, I just thought one thing I was going to add to what Brad said is the truth is, I feel like for the last several decades, we've all been working on a just-in-time model. Okay. And the bottom line is, and I'm hoping maybe some of the schools that listening can take this to CIOs or C levels and push it up the chain a little bit. Just in time is perfect as long as you don't have a black swan event, right? Or something like this. Who could you imagine the people in the Suez Canal who were like, wait, a boat can turn sideways and stop all shipping for 2 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that they hadn't thought through that scenario a little bit. So look, back to your question. I just want, I guess the message to hope with schools is that we all try to say, hey, can you give us budgets that help us prepare a little bit more, look a little farther into the future? If we don't have life cycle refresh rates, that we put one in place, and so that we can better plan and so on and have a little more flexibility there. As far as things shipping and arriving quickly, we have some things like the DMPS, and the truth is on that right now with lead times 52 weeks. If you heard a little bit more or a little bit less, just work with me here, on generalizing. But we've got stuff like the HDPS switchers and some DM light extenders that are only 3 or 4 months out. We've got some of the One Beyond cameras and some of the other devices that are common but are a little more common in education, are only a couple weeks out, or even virtual control and some of the software solutions you mentioned earlier. There's no lead time on software licenses. So, the truth is it varies a huge amount, and we are starting to get better signs to maybe, have that shift. But right now there's truths that are no lead time to truths that are a year.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Okay, go ahead.
if I can add to that a little bit on the were you guys lying conversation, like why, who was telling the lie the whole time? In actually, accusing or saying that our suppliers were lying to us too. I think that the reality is, on our part, we were not trying to lie or obfuscate the information. We were sharing the best information that we had, and that continued to change. And the reality is that's also true for our suppliers too, right? Our suppliers have suppliers. There are 3 foundries in the world that can really create the substrate material to create some of these semiconductor components. And when those facilities are at overcapacity and they have a backlog growing, they're unable to deliver to their suppliers and then our suppliers all the way through. And so I think that this is, as a global supply chain, and as John said, this is a black swan event, and everybody's trying to do. I believe we have felt it from our suppliers, and I know that our team in the field and the rest of Crestron too, we're doing the best that we can to share that information and be open and transparent with us. That does sometimes open us up for being wrong, and we've been wrong, unfortunately, a couple of times. But it's not an effort to try and avoid any responsibility. We take the responsibility. We know you rely on us. We appreciate the way that you have embraced and leverage our products. And nobody is more disappointed than we are that we haven't been able to meet those commitments. But this is such an extraordinary moment in time, but it is a moment, and the rest of the world will get through it. Experts have been claiming for decades that the global supply chain, while it was operating, is surely brittle. And we're feeling that, we're seeing that. And it comes all the way down to the capacity at different suppliers. The whole just-in-time model has pushed us all to really scrimp on inventory and be highly targeted, which then opens us up to when there's a shipping delay or there's a lockdown or all these other things that all came together at once to create such a disruption across the entire channel. But we're committed to you. We're committed to this market. It's a very important market to us. We are very proud of the way that higher ed has embraced our technology and makes it an integral part of your plans and your campuses. And in fact, I know it's an integral part of your own, empowers your own identities too. I've seen the work that you've done, Joe. And then I was also proofing a video, a case study of UNCG and the esports lab there, which is really spectacular. And we're proud to be a part of delivering those kinds of solutions. And so we're disappointed that we find ourselves in this situation, but we're still committed, right? Even though we've got a delay and we've had these disruptions in boxes, John's still here, the whole field team's still here, I'm still here to help you guys as best we can to get through this.
Yeah, no, that's good. So, and we're starting to get questions in, which is great. And I'm going to ask these questions in terms of continuing our conversation. So don't worry, everyone, we're going to get to you. But one was brought up, and I want to touch on something you just said, Brad. So, you obviously want to deliver products. You want to get it out there. So you're trying to tell me you don't want to just sit on $1 billion worth of orders? You can't. Is that what you're trying to say? That you don't want to just sit on $1 billion worth of stuff and not be able to deliver it?
Look, no. One of the things that attracted me personally, but more importantly, has fueled companies since the inception of the company, is building cool stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And then the important part of it is selling so much of it that you can keep building more cool stuff, and that's what we want to do. And so fulfilling your orders, getting you the product is what enables us to continue to do that innovation. So sitting on a backlog is never a good situation for any of us. But at least, I know it's a pain for us, but more importantly, we know how much it impacts you, right? Your planning, the ability for you to serve your own internal customers, the budgeting cycles. I see some of the questions coming in with regard to planning around that. So while we dislike it, we know how disruptive it is to your own areas and your own projects and everything that you're doing too. And that's actually, frankly, one of the areas that really pains us the most is the impact on all of you.
Yeah, and let's get to some of that impact, because it was brought up. I was listening to the EdTech podcast, and Erin did a great job with her first episode of that. So congrats to her on taking that over. And something that that was brought up that I didn't think about. I'm in a unique situation, but a lot of times it was brought up with when you have a delay and you can't get something. It was brought up that I end up paying for it twice in some institutions, because you look at it, even though maybe it's the money is only coming out once. If you ask for funding that's rolled around a, say, July 1 to June 30 cycle, and you can't deliver it, our schools don't always just say, oh, just keep that money and do it. No, it gets disappeared. A lot of it is use it or lose it. And then when you finally get it shipped is when you get invoiced and when you actually have to pay for it. And we can't always then ask over and over and over again for the same money, right? I'm hoping, and this is the conversations I had with my institutions, is going, look, we have to understand that cycle doesn't work anymore in this situation, the black swan event. But how do you? All right, and I'll either let you, John, or Brad take this one. How can we have those conversations? How should we be having those conversations, with our institutions. How do we pass that information on? And, does this, this whole, net 30, net 90 thing not work anymore? I mean, I look at an integrator. I'd hate to be an integrator right now, sitting on 2/3 of a project and not the last third, and not even be able to bill for it. So throwing that out there, but it is a reality that hits home. What are your thoughts there?
You want to take that first, John, and then I can add to it.
Yeah. I mean, because I'll take one aspect of it is, Joe, you're 100% right. You can't just keep going back and go, well, I didn't get to use that money next year. I need to. I guess what I'd start by asking is, work with us, maybe see if there's some possibilities of some alternate designs. I mean, I worked with a school in Ohio that's basically they're taking they're going to use VC4. They're going to use some HDPSs instead of DMPSs. And sorry, I know that's a lot of part numbers. I'm assuming a lot with the audience, but in an amp and some speakers, some stuff we can deliver right away. I think that if we are in a situation of use it or lose it, what can we do to work around that? And my hope and thought too is to have some discussions about standards and the importance of standards, that we don't want to throw out standards if there's an event that's this large. In other words, I'm hoping is the purchasing department going to look back at you and go, what supply chain issue, and why would you want an extension this year? That's absurd. But there would be plenty of projects that cannot move regardless. So I think we could look at some alternate designs. What could we do? A lot of people don't know we have some existing or some earlier versions, for instance, of touchscreens. If you don't need the 1070, the 10-inch, and you can use the 1060, the previous series, we have several hundred on the shelf that would be ready to go. If you didn't need the camera in the touchscreen, we have the government no camera version and hundreds on the shelf. So I guess what I'm trying to give a couple quick examples, but talk to us about what could we do instead. I have to deliver this project, period. One other possible idea is collaboration with some other either departments on campus or schools. And why I say that is because I work with a university in Michigan, and I have 10 different A+ partners at that school. So each group has their own siloed AV department. And I guess my question is, if you guys always to work separately, could we help collaborate a little bit and find out, oh, the School of Business has some gear that I need that they're not using right now, or the School of Education has a room that's almost always offline. Could I pull some of that and trade with some of them? I know this is out there, and I know it's a lot to ask, but I also know that this situation won't last forever. And sorry, Brad, jump in there.
No, that's great. The only thing I'd add to that is, the plus side and the plus side of the fact that this is a global issue, and it isn't just your department. It's not just one supplier. It is happening everywhere. So I can't imagine that your budgeting office is only having this discussion with you alone. And so one of the things that we did as soon as we started to see these constraints is to instruct the field team to go out and have overt conversations with you and with others. Place your orders early. Let's be more proactive in our planning. And so I think that that's another element of, pulling all of us through this situation is build that roadmap for all of your details. You probably have that, but be open with that. I know you have that, but be open with other manufacturers like us too, to get through that. If we can be of assistance in speaking to your budgeting office, the field team, they're there to help you. And they can go in and explain some of these details and kind of argue for or help people understand it so that we can plan all of that. So, continuing to plan ahead, build that life cycle, give us the details of when you need it, when you don't, right? If you don't want it or too early, share that with us and we'll help you build that roadmap too. And then that can be also a vector that you can use in trying to get some of that funding, because the reality is this has disrupted budget cycles for everybody. And so don't be shy for asking for advocating for that. In addition to, of course, getting scrappy, as John had suggested, to find solutions that you can get delivered today as well.
Yeah. And you bring up something great. So I'm gonna ask a couple of these questions that are in the Q&A. And Bob, I see your hand up. We're getting you. Don't worry. But a couple of things that are here. You mentioned standards, John, and of course, BC is on the call, and he wrote an article for Hired AV about standards. All right, it got some, and is it important anymore to keep to our standards when you got a building's got opens, a building's got to open, and Ryan's got a question on here too about are you do we have to wait till things are complete before you ship it? How can we start to scale these things? Are you starting to see people go, I got to find an alternate, I got to find an alternate? How can we manage that? Are you able to do partial things? So, hey, if I can only get one wing open, I can get one wing open. Is it, or does that impact how your order sits on your computers? I don't know, and I'm kind of throwing a lot of that together. Same thing. Scott's got here a question going, shipping delay on a new product. Conversation was about repairs. This was years ago. This is even before COVID. Now we're still trying to work. How do I, and this is a reality, to be honest, a lot of us are sitting at our desk going, I don't know what to do, right? I don't know what to do. I got 20 rooms, but can I 5? So John, what are solutions for that? Can we do that? And is this the time to break our standard? You kind of alluded to it.
I think I read BC's article, and I absolutely understand what he was saying. And BC, thank you, by the way, if you are on and listening, for putting that out, because I think it's part of the discussion. What I had mentioned to Joe was just that, is an event like this, which is, and it's not a single event. It's been happening for 1.5 years. So I also don't want to make it sound like it's been a few months or 2 years, but a good enough reason to understand how long we've been in this industry. And I know it's been a while for you, BC, and you, Joe, and I've been 25 plus years. And it's like, we have never seen anything like this, bottom line. So I guess what I was hoping is that, in a situation where we go, this isn't happening more and more. It's not like every 3 months we get a delay that we can't handle, or even every year. Again, with our manufacturing process, with our incredible investment in raw materials, and actually in just build finished goods sitting on our shelf before all this happened, there's normally not those bumps in the road. Now, having said all that, yes, if you want to, if your project that you have coming up has to be done, like I said, please talk to us, because I wanted to go, I saw the questions too. And I think that first affects a little bit of one of the questions, which is, sorry, it was the first question on there, but for some reason.
I hit done, and we're going to
It's
answer it live.
under
You
answer,
killed it.
Yeah. So sorry, Ryan, you mentioned our order shipping complete. That does probably depend on what you put on your PO and the dealer put on the PO to us. Try to make sure partial shipments are okay. I would recommend that to anyone for any manufacturer ordering right now, just because it's more difficult than it's ever been, and we don't want to hold stuff up. And yes, I guess, I don't know, a little peek in the back end is this: if you have an order there sitting that have 50 quantity 50 and you only need 4, at least be sure to discuss it with us. There's going to be times where we have a build and then the next order in line we don't have the quantity for. But I want you to know it's very, very difficult and very manual on the back end to try to move some of those things, the momentum of the train, and grab 1 or 2 pieces off one of the cars that's screaming along, there. But back around to standards and to, I got to use what I can 100%. And please talk to us about that. Hey, I got to put in another manufacturer's this or that. How will it work? Our professional design services, tech sales, what we call it internally, they will help you and talk through some of that with you and see what we can do. Maybe it's you keep the Crestron control there with VC4. I was talking to someone at CCUMC last week, and they said, look, we we're playing around with VC4 to see if we can deploy it on more of a large scale. And Joe, I know you guys deployed it all over the place. So maybe it's even a glimpse into the future as people start moving to more software-based solutions. So there's a lot. Scott, I wanted to just real quickly mention repairs. I know there's pain with repairs too. But the components are also wrapped up in the supply chain issues. So again, we're trying to sit here and weigh on the fly. How much do I keep for some units that might have this or that happen versus filling someone's order who has to get to that ribbon cutting you said. So
yeah.
I'll leave it there, but tell me if I'm missing.
Yeah, no, that was good. And you did allude to VC4, and we're going to get to that because we need to. It kind of goes into David's thing about innovation cycle. So I think it's interesting. But my family heritage is from Yukvi, Estonia, and we have a question from Estonia. So I'm sorry, that gets jumped. We're a global audience here at Higher Ed AV, in case you didn't know. But it actually goes off to a point of George's comment there too in the questions as well of, yeah, you brought up, about, we can get the touch panel without a camera. Well, what if you need a camera down the road? You end up paying for it twice. Or even if I go deviate from my standard just to open up, now I got to go to my provost later and go, oh yeah, remember how I already asked you for $1 million? Well, I really need another $1 million because I now need to put in the thing. That's a hard conversation to have. And changing it later becomes another investment, right? And the thing that I've always said about higher ed, which is what makes us the best vertical of all of the verticals, you agree, we're the best vertical of all. I know you don't have to say it out loud. We know it's truth. Is the fact of how we do things in scale, right? We are not a typical corporate customer, right? Where it's 2 training rooms and a few conference rooms, et cetera. We do things in the hundreds. The saying I always use on the podcast is I never buy one of something, I buy 200 of something, right? So it's not that I'm changing out one touch panel for one that doesn't have a camera. I might change out 200, right? And now that becomes what I have to live with down the road. And that's tough, right? And I have to answer to that. And it's my job on the line, right? It's not Crestron's job or any other manufacturer's job. It's my job, right? And so now I have to think about that. I have to think, what if, and let's just make the assumption, we're going to assume, because we all are, okay, regardless of what you say, we're all finding shortcuts right now. It's the nature of it. But it goes to Doug's question now, and this is going to be the tough one for you all. Can I actually get this stuff in 2023, 2024? How far am I having to band-aid my solutions? And I think we all did. We all went supply chain, just like COVID was going to last 15 days. Supply chain's only going to last 30 days. So, but next thing we know, we're 2.5 years later.
Yep.
What is it? I'm going to leave it at that. I gave you a wide open door.
So let me jump in on this first. So on the standards discussion, I think it is important to remember, one, you do have to deliver things on a tight timeline. Sometimes you just don't have a choice. You got to find a shortcut. But don't lose sight of the fact that this is a moment and it will pass. And part of us getting through this moment is the judgment call and the experience to say when a shortcut is acceptable versus when no, it's better to actually hold out and do the right solution. And again, as John said, we're here to help you kind of figure out the right kind of solution. Many of these standards you developed over years of experience and testing great products and finding really good solutions that work for you at scale. Just because we're experiencing this delay doesn't necessarily mean you should throw it all out. And so what I've witnessed and what I've seen from others is do what you need to do to finish a job and get it through, but make sure that you're clear on things that are shortcuts versus, hey, this might be a long-term evolution. There are great things to consider for long-term evolutions and that will inform future standards. VC4 is an example of one of those. So I think that keeping clarity around what's a shortcut to get a job done now, but also retaining the integrity of your standards and your approaches and learning from it is certainly a good thing. With regard to 2023 and 2024, the reality is things are getting better. They're getting better much more quickly than we had actually anticipated. And part of the reason, I think we said this on the town halls, is that part of the reason that our lead times are where they are is trying to be, in a situation where we're under promising, so that we can over deliver to you, and to be more confident in the delivery dates that we have. That's part of the reason some of them are out there. But just today, in fact, 2 hours ago, I was on a call. Dell Computers is a new partner that we brought on to help us deliver on some of our commitments. We just got a phone call from them and said, "Hey, we have even more components and more computes than we had told you, than you were allocated before. Do you want them?" And that same conversation has been happening across a number of suppliers over the last 2 or 3 weeks. In fact, John and I were talking about this earlier. One of our key component suppliers, on the broker market, in the same 4-day period, the broker called us and said, "Hey, it's this amount. It's $44, and you can get this many." Then the next day they called and said, "No, well, that lot's gone, but now we've got a bigger lot and it's only $22." And then the next day they called and said, "Oh, well, we have an even bigger lot and it's only $16." So there is a clear improvement that's happening across a lot of the components out there. So our confidence is increasing on our ability to deliver all of those in 2023 and 2024. But again, we're going to continue to be conservative with you, because we don't want to find ourselves in a situation again where we keep pushing things out again. That's not inevitable. It may happen. I'm sorry. There's no guarantee it will never ever happen again, but we're doing whatever we can to avoid that. But the confidence is certainly improving, and what you're seeing in the consumer electronics market, personal consumer electronics, the demand is falling through the roof, right? I'm sorry, falling, just melting away. That's freeing up a lot more components, and that's part of the reason that some of these suppliers are calling us and saying, "Hey, we have the supply now." And I think that will continue. You're seeing that across many sectors. And so, I think we'll see a quick improvement, and that gives us confidence in the 2023 and 2024 dates.
Yeah, and you actually brought up a good point. And because I think what a lot of people don't understand when we look at the world from our bubble of our offices and as tech managers, which again, it's our job, I get it. But what people don't understand is when the pandemic hit, chip manufacturers, when they already knew there was going to be limited supply, went for the low-hanging fruit. And I think you brought that up, Brad, when you said consumer electronics. A big shift went to, hey, there's a work from home demand. There is a demand in the change of people's spending, and they pivoted manufacturing that direction. And we never talk about that, to where it wasn't just that, you had lockdowns that shut down chip manufacturers. They said, well, wait a minute, I've actually got a quicker, faster, profit margin if I throw this to this, $200 Amazon display that they can deliver and make a happy customer. And where are they looking at it? Or wait on a net 90, net 120, this go down 8 things. I would do it too if I owned the business, right? And I think that's important.
Well, totally. Well, I mentioned the three major the fabs, right? And moving to more of the high density silicon, like the wafers. When you're building a 5 nanometer component versus some of the larger industrial grade components, which we do actually use a lot of, the manufacturers can get more components, higher dollars out of a singular wafer. And so there is a priority there. But also where that demand spike was. And the demand spike on consumer electronics led the demand spike for our workplace components, right? And so part of that is just timing and working itself out, right? Hello, Peloton, right? Peloton saw this whole spike, and then they recovered, and then they saw the demand really drop off, right? We're not seeing that in our business, right? You're not seeing that in you're still going to be outfitting classrooms and outfitting campuses. And in fact, and I'd love to actually talk a little bit more about that too. Do you see increasing demand, durable demand over the next several years, as schools invest more money in getting people to campus? and getting more and more students connected. I think that we're going to continue to see more and more investment there, unlike the the consumer market that will go up and down. But the downslide on the consumer side is actually a good thing for all of us, because it will certainly add to availability of components, so that we can meet this increasing demand.
Yeah, and real quick to jump in on one point, if I can, is just to add to it. I know that there's people who do have projects that are forward looking, they're a year out, but lead time's a year right now. What can we do? Brad and I were talking a little bit about FIFO, the FIFO way of shipping out orders, which is first in, first out. So, there is not an obligation to keep an order with us, but if an order is placed, you get your place in line. And so on one hand, I guess we don't want to have an influx of sudden orders that are just really kind of not needed. But the flip side is, if you have a building that's, say, opening in January 2024, we'd like to work with you, your integrator, or maybe several integrators if it goes out to bid, and say, could we get your place in line right now? Could we get an order on the books that holds your place in line, that you would start getting lead time updates, that you would get an initial lead time? Here's our, hopefully now under promise. And then you maybe, as like I said, we're at least getting positive reports, and it's been just in the last few weeks. But maybe there's this light at the end of the tunnel where you'd see a 52-week lead time shift to a 40, to a 36, and now you're okay. We're good.
52 to 51 and 6 days.
Yeah, exactly.
I had to go there. Come on. But actually, and it goes to Scott's thing. You guys got great questions coming in. It's like, I don't even have to host this because they're just getting all the great material for me. But it's actually, it isn't, Scott has an interesting one, because it is warranties, what's going to happen. And I don't want you all to change your policy, but we want you to change your policy. Is there going to be some, well, I mean, just say, I'll be honest, right? Is there going to be some leeway on some of this stuff? I mean, I know you've already made leeways, like in how we can use our A+ points and things like that, right? And kind of carry which side of the year you want to put it on, right? Where you order it, where it's delivered. Are we going to see leeway in some warranty stuff as well?
I don't want.
Oh,
go ahead, John.
Let me take a crack, and then you can say, no, John's wrong. Because Scott, I'm worried about your question too, and worried about the implications. Let me start by saying the good thing is we don't see a ton of failures from year 3 to year 5 or something. So first and foremost, ask us every single time. We got 12, a team of 12 to 14, people that are the United States and Canada. They work directly with the schools. Let's talk about it. If you say, hey, I had to get this stuff on order, you guys came through and shipped it sooner or whatever, now it's going to sit here for a while. And then when does my warranty start? Let's talk about that, because we may not be able to make a national program that covers all instances. But I hope you find that we always bend over backwards to say, yeah, we get it. You did order this DMPS, and you did have to wait, or the warranty, it got shipped, but the rest of my units didn't get shipped. My scalar receiver didn't get shipped, and now I had to wait for a while. So first and foremost, you have a unit breakdown, please talk to us. And then Brad said, what were you going to say?
First of all, John said the first and most important thing is we're going to do the right thing for you. So stay in touch with us, right? Crestron has built the business around working with you. This is a huge event, which means, we look at those things really closely and try to do the best thing for you and for our partners. One point of clarification, your warranty clock doesn't start when you place the order. The warranty clock actually starts when the order is shipped. So if you place the order now, but it doesn't ship until, say, October of 2023, for install in January 2024, there's no change for you, really, right? So that's an important distinction. But on those cases where maybe you're waiting for a component or whatever, talk to us and we'll figure out how to make sure that we take care of you, right? Because we're in it for the long haul. We're in it for the relationship with you, not just a particular warranty on an individual box. And the return rates are so low on many of our products. We feel confident in our ability to help support you through many of those things.
I thought you were going to say, like, to make it up to us, you were going to do like a buy one, get two free deal on all components or something. Like, no, that wasn't going to be it.
John will sign off on that. Yeah, that's totally fine.
No, believe me, I'll be asking. I'll be like, what about a buyback program or something?
Hey, I have to ask, right?
I need everybody who's on here to bring me the ideas, and then we'll see what we can force Brad's.
A BOGO.
Yeah. No, the reality is that we do want to work with you and find great solutions. But at the end of the day, we are, in order to build cool new products, it does require revenue also. So being fair with that is what guides us most of the times.
All right. I do want to get to the kind of the innovation way and actually some tangible things, but I do want to ask Dustin's question here is the most recent export policies that the U.S. has implemented in the last couple of weeks harm recovery and ability to meet new deadlines. And again, this is outside Crestron thing. This is a global thing, where obviously those who are not familiar, there's now been kind of I don't know what the right words are, restrictions against, Chinese companies and stuff. So would you see that? Again, it's not a Crestron thing. That's a global government thing. Do you see how that impacts?
Yeah, sure. The thing is that so many of the issues that we're dealing with right now are geopolitical ones, and they certainly impact all manufacturers. It's hard. I'm not familiar with that specific policy that you're referring to, but there are many examples of policies that hinder and/or slow the recovery components. There are things like, for instance, China has continued with their zero COVID policy. We don't manufacture in China. However, TI, who is one of the biggest component suppliers that has been constrained, has a major distribution facility in Shanghai. So I think we all remember April of last year when there was another date change. Well, guess what happened? All of Shanghai was shut down in April for a number of weeks, which meant none of the TI components could be accepted and or shipped out. Oh, and by the way, even once Shanghai opened up, you can see the Google Map pictures of all the boats that were parked outside of Shanghai with that congestion. So governmental political policies do create some of those disruptions. And we'll continue, we're continually at risk of those things, right? Ukraine and Russia has created some of those situations. Core elements that go into components come out of Ukraine. And surely a war or an invasion is going to create some constraints on your ability to get some of those components. Hopefully, though, we're starting to see a recovery in the whole supply chain. It's called a chain for a reason, so that you can kind of work around some of these disruptions. But yeah, they're a threat to a full-on recovery. The supply chain guys say, and I try to keep them away from a microphone because it can get really scary. But for the full global supply chain, not Crestron, the whole world to get back to normal, it's going to take a decade, right? For all of the elements of that chain to build up the inventory, to have everything that we all took for granted, it's going to take a decade. And it may take that long before you're completely out of risk of any political disruptions. But those political disruptions are very real. And we've been living with them over the last 4 years or more, right? The tariffs that were placed on goods coming in and out of China, several years ago. The Huawei was another one where, Huawei components, couldn't be installed in these things. So I think manufacturers, we've all learned to navigate around those. The thing that really made our options limited was just the state of the supply chain. the state of all of those pieces. So hopefully that gets back stronger more quickly so that we can avoid too much impact by those disruptions. But it is always a risk.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with, how many things impact other things down the road that you just don't see. And, like you pointed out, you might not manufacture in China, but your suppliers do. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that, it has an impact down the road. And it does. So there's one more topic that I have to bring up. I was promised by my vertical I'd bring it up, and then we're going to go to innovation, and we're going to go to the Joe was right all along moment.
Oh.
Well, no,
We gotta get
no
to
show
that.
is complete without the Joe
That's
was
right.
right all along moment. You understand? There's been some smaller players in the space that have been trying to play big, little rough dog with you guys as the big dog here on the block. And I had the conversation, and there's a lot of, and I don't want to bring up other names, but a few others have done it and gone, well, they can't ship, but we can, right? You should move to us because they can do it, or we can do it and they can't. I do look at some things and go, you have more in backlog that if they had those orders, they would shut down overnight because they don't do that much in orders in 10 years, what you have in a backlog of orders, right? I don't know that they could even handle it. Maybe I'm giving your answer for you. But
Thank you.
because it's true, right? It is easy for someone who's trying to build a business to say, well, we can do it. But in fact, you probably couldn't if you had to handle the volume. But that's just me. Maybe I'm right or I'm wrong. I don't know. But, what is, I'm just going to leave it open just to speak to it because we do talk about it on the back end. It was a conversation. I'm going to leave it. I'm not even going to open a full question there. Talk about the situation.
So I'll take one stab at it, and then John can help improve that. We've heard this for quite some time. Oh, all these other manufacturers can ship, and you can't. We hear that claim all the time, and it might be true. In certain cases, it is true. And in certain cases, it's certainly not true, and it is just marketing and taking advantage of an opportunity. But the reality is, we don't dig deeply into what they're doing on their manufacturing processes because we're too focused on our own business, right? And we want to keep doing that. We have explored others, and we know some of the manufacturers that make those claims. We've looked at the similar going to architectures like that. We've dug into the supply of components to go embrace an approach similar to that. And the moment you pressure test it and you put the volumes that we would look to order against that supply, it would not stand up. And so we've abandoned looking at designs and stuff that would take that kind of an approach for that reason. And so, it's we don't know all of the specifics of their own manufacturing approach, but we don't feel that it could handle the volume that we're through on that. Now, on the same hand, if you need to back to the standards and the shortcut discussion, if you need to use a little bit of duct tape and baling wire to get you through a situation, go and do it. But if it's also a superior product and it's available, go and do it, right? Because at the end of the day, Crestron got added to your standards because of the quality of the product, the features of the product. We earned the business through that product, and it's on us to earn it back if you have to go and use some kind of a short-term thing. But also beware, because we've heard from many customers, hey, I'm canceling my order with you because so-and-so down the street said they can get me your product, get me a similar product on a much quicker time frame. And then they come back 6 weeks later, hat in hand, and say, well, I only got 2 of the 100 I ordered, and I really need yours. Can I have that back? So we've seen that too. So I think that there are a lot of dynamics at play, and we can't comment on the specifics of what a manufacturer is doing, but you do the right thing for you and for your projects. Short term, if you must, we're here to help you find alternative designs, which might even include that. We'll win your business back by the quality of our product. Make sure that if you go down that path, sometimes you're getting what you pay for too, because sometimes we do know too that there are examples where inventory is available because nobody wanted it, not because it's a really desirable product. And so, but also beware too on some of those promises. Sometimes, there are games being played to get an order, but on the back end, they may not actually be able to fulfill on that too. And I'm not speaking about any specific manufacturer. These are all very high level, general observations out in the market.
Yeah, that's good. John?
Yeah, and Joe, I would just say the one other thing to add is is that our industry works better with competition. And
I agree.
I don't think we can be driven to be the best company we can be and always strive to, but without anybody at least knocking on people's doors and saying, oh, we can do it better. So, I would welcome that and have worked with several different manufacturers in my 25 years. And I think that we do an amazing job of trying to innovate and of trying to add the features and functions that are really needed and required. But it doesn't mean that I want to see everybody else out of the market. This group is so great because it's so diverse. This vertical and higher ed AV and HETMA and CCUMC. So at any rate, that strengthens us and pushes us all to be better. I don't think there's just a simple, straightforward, we're better than someone.
Love it.
Can I jump in on? Can I jump in on one of those questions there, Joe? Too.
Yeah.
I guess not everybody sees them, but have you considered buying those competitors to help short term?
I mean, you opened the door with One Beyond, so you're the acquisition company now, right?
We are, but I think that let's parse that out a little bit, right? One Beyond was an acquisition not for the current products, great products, but we didn't buy it for the current products. We bought it for the domain expertise, the engineering team, and the knowledge to bring intelligent video capabilities into all of our products, right? So happens to have a line of cameras that work really great, particularly in higher education. But that was really the play there is long-term investments. The company has invested for a long time in core competencies around control, around audio and video distribution, around lighting control. And this intelligent video we know is one of those things that has to be core to who we are and core to our solutions. And that will take shape many different ways, right? How do you leverage that and integrate that into NVX and build it into other core products that may not be so obvious today? So that was the reason for that. Have we considered and looked at other competitors? Yeah, you bet. Is that a way? I mean, when I say we have tried to pull every lever possible to get us through this situation, we have all of those options are on the table. Ultimately, we walked away from those for a couple of reasons. One, in most of those cases, when we got into the nitty gritty, and they use the same suppliers we do, but when we look at their specific mix of the components and the technologies that they use, they can't handle the volumes that we're talking about, right? When you suddenly 10x the volume of any particular manufacturer, no supply chain, especially right now, is currently situated to do that. So that wouldn't solve it. Second, some of those also would be a core shift in the way a technology is deployed. If you think of NVX versus, say, SDVOE, and architectural differences that would imply, that actually creates more work for you in your standards and in your deployments. And that didn't feel like that was a good short-term fix either, or even the right thing to do in the long run. So we have done that. We have been in situations too where we've partnered more closely with others to help solve this situation. I mentioned Dell earlier. We went into this pandemic without a partnership with Dell, and we had it with other manufacturers, and they couldn't keep up, and so we went to others. So we've pulled all these different levers, and hopefully that helps understand a little bit of the thinking behind the things we didn't do and some of the things that we did do.
Yeah, no, I love that. And, you should, I mean, let's just buy them. Wait, also there's other companies. Yeah, that is true that, they don't have, well, then again, it's the year of the great resignation. You never know who's going to be wearing next. But just kidding. All right. I have to, all right. Now the part of the show that everyone's been waiting for, and it's the Joe is right all along moment. I know that's why people attend, just to hear it. Now, before the pandemic, was talking that maybe people should be thinking of things like virtual control, server control, cloud services. It turns out there's some random university in Los Angeles that happens to be the single largest VC4 deployment in all of higher education, XIO cloud and all that stuff. And people thought I was crazy, but guess what is shipping right now? Software. So the day that I saw your email that Crestron sent out about, now shipping VC4 on a Dell, I texted John. The second I got the email, I said, brilliant. Like literally, that was my first response. But I think this goes and starts to pull it all the way, and we find all together, and we can now get to David's question about the innovation cycles and things like that. But maybe the whole thing, and I hope to believe that this supply chain issue taught us, is that we can't rely on the supply chain. We have to push things, and the direction that technology has been moving in is the cloud, is software, is server-based AV technology. As Crestron, you were the first to put an RJ45 on a box. You saw IT coming all along, right? And then when I approached you before, even before the pandemic, and I approached you all saying, here's what I want to do. And next thing we know, we have a bunch of NDAs signed together, and I'm in Jersey, and you're like, look at what we're working on, and it's like, oh, this is pretty awesome, So talk about that to me. And again, my thought to everybody, I know this is the hardest part, going back to maybe I have to use, if I had to use a different product or something just to get a building open, the one thing you don't want to leave is your controls. Control is the center of everything, right? And I think that, passing data from one place to another, you can get an NVX later. You can get it, right? But control is the tough one, right? And I think that a lot of times you have to rely on a control box, but you have a solution for that. That's where support is harder. That's where programming comes. That's where so many things rely upon that. And why I sit there and go, okay, maybe you have to use a different display, right? Maybe your standard display isn't there and you're going to go to a different manufacturer. Maybe you have to use a different dock cam. Maybe you have to use a different microphone. Maybe you have to use a different, AV over IP content transfer thing. But your control is key. And that's where I sit there and go. So talk about that and the importance of that. Basically just talk about how I was right all along. Just kidding. No, but what are those things that we can think about that, part of this webinar was what can we do moving forward right now, both in the short term and the long term? And I'll open that up.
Do you want to lead off with that, John?
Sure. Well, yeah. I'd start with, yes, Joe, we always enjoy the "I told you so" moments. You're good at those, and no, but I'm a little serious in that you and you mentioned, BC, the HETMA group. There are a lot of forward thinkers that we're getting together more and collaborating more, and we actually talked about it last week at CCUMC. We were saying, is it here now? I do think it's here, and it's here to stay. There's just going to be an adoption in an amount of time. I really like what I mentioned, someone talking about they're playing around with one of the VC4 PC-3s, just to have a couple rooms and a pre-production environment and make sure they do it. I do hear a lot of concerns about, well, what if, if my server goes offline, am I going to take down my whole, floor of rooms? We think about the IT side, we think about fault tolerances they have and redundancies that they have built in. These have some really strong structural support, or the software type solution has some strong structural support. So I think it's the way of the future. Some of the other things that it does is I think it allows a great amount of scalability. even if you lit up VC4 and still controlled almost every room with a processor inside it, there are other kind of cool things you can do by having your backbone be software-based control, whether it's spinning up a new room real easily and quickly that was a freaking janitor's closet at the beginning of the pandemic, and now it's a professor recording room when they can record parts of lessons. You would have the ability to connect and get control of some pieces right away through the network connections you have, rather than installing processors or waiting on them. So you've got this IT-based architecture. I think you've got this level of scalability. You've got the ease of mass deployments. If you want to take one programming issue or change, you want to fix, you can deploy it to the rooms all at once, as well as plenty of ways for like a test environment. So I think there's a lot good. I guess, did any of that check any of the boxes, which is why you used it?
And it does. It is scalability and everything. That is exactly it. And ease, and I'll answer to it too. Because I did have a conversation at CCMC this last week about it, and I hear it all the time. Why would you want to use something that's server based, not whether your whole network goes down? Okay, well, first off, so a couple of misnomers, since we did do this, right? We were there's something about doing it first. There's also, because it shows that you're forward thinking, but also you're probably the stupidest person on earth to do it first too. But what we did notice, because we put it through the test, if it disconnects, first off, if the network goes down, I'm like 90th on the list of people to call, because that means every Zoom call, the president's office is dead. Like, no one's calling me. I just feel bad for the infrastructure team. They're getting all the calls, right? But what we did notice is when we shut it down, it's not that everything, and this is the image that a lot of people have, is that, if the network goes down, VC4 goes down, every classroom turns off, shuts off, goes back to normal, and as if it was the middle of the night and there's nothing you can do. No, it just stays in the last known state it was in. That's what we actually found out. So if it was in the middle of a class and someone was presenting on, had the PowerPoint up and you shut the server down, they just can't switch to something else, but usually they don't. And then it only takes about 3 or 4 minutes for the whole thing to come back up, about 10 minutes for everything to reconnect across the enterprise. So in theory, you could restart the entire server in the middle of a class and no one would ever know, right? And then it comes right and it just stays in that state. So that is something that I think is a misnomer, and you guys as Crestron could get that message out better. So I think that was the kind of the thing, but it was all those other reasons. But also, now we can kind of keep going forward and we can answer, because now I don't have to worry about a control processor. I'm bringing new rooms online all day long, and it doesn't impact me, right? It's just adding a new program into that virtual control. So, Brad, did you want to add to John's or mine?
I do. I think that one thing that's important is that while you said "told you so," it's true. This isn't also one of those short-term fixes because of the supply chain moment. This is actually a trend, and this is an opportunity, and it's worth the investment in looking into it. Yes, there's a lot of misnomers we need to dispel, but that's part of the adoption of a new approach or a new methodology. Software versus hardware is opening up so many capabilities for us, right? Scalability is really important, right? The number of rooms and the number of technologies that you have to manage is only growing. It is not shrinking, it is growing, and it will continue to grow. And so what are the ways that you can bring scalability in the management and the deployment of that? The way VC4, and you touched on it at the very end, was built is so that you can use the same program on hardware or software in VC4. So you can have a mixed deployment too, right? You have hardware processors already. You want to spin up VC4 for sections, you can do that. You can transition over time. Even if you go all in VC4 and then you need one particular instance where a processor is the right decision and do that, you can do that too. And you're not learning, doing programming or individual or distinct programming approaches. You get that consistency because it is the Crestron platform to be able to do that on hardware or software. So it's certainly something to look at in planning. And if you're going to evaluate your standards, now's a great time to do it. And that's a direction to go that you would end up building and investing in over 5 years, or even longer, versus just trying to get through the supply chain crunch.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I think that It kind of goes with, like you said, the direction of things. What's interesting is when you all came out with virtual control, it was something that was new, right? I mean, again, NDA in it, right? Before now it's commonplace. But now look at all the other major competitors have now come out with some type of virtual control. It is the direction things are moving in. So since you're here, and this is just a quiet group of just us, no one else paying attention, what are some of those secret things that you guys are working on that you haven't announced yet so that we can start planning?
Yeah. Okay. So we debate this a lot internally, and how open and transparent are we with a lot of things. So first off, we've heard you and this community, and we've heard from many others. Don't talk to me about new stuff until you ship me the stuff I'm already waiting for. And so we're trying to find that balance of we got to fulfill your orders. You have plans, you have projects. We got to make sure that gets out the door to you. What that means is that we may seem like we're being quiet, but we're actually very hard at work. Continuing the innovation cycle. And so this disruption, while we do have a big percentage of our engineering team focused on how do we do alternative designs, how do we make sure that we fulfill all this backlog and all these things that we're working on, we still have a huge part of our team that's also focused on future innovations. And we have really great things coming down the pipe. Now, we've also reached out to many of you to have you weigh in on some of our approaches. What does the future of DMPS look like, right? The next DMPS, what features does it need to have? What should it, what do we not need? What must we put in? And I know that the product team and John here is one of the greatest champions for this community, jumping up and down and saying, hey, we got to have this product. We've heard from them. And so, he's a great funnel of your feedback and requests with regard to what new products we build. But then we also have arranged many calls, I'm sure with you on this call, to give us input on those. So the innovation continues, but we're a little more tight-lipped about how broadly we talk about it. But there are things that you can count on us where we will continue to invest, right? And I think that's important to know. DMPS is an important product line for us. We know it's an important product line for many of you. And so we will continue to innovate around that product line. NVX is a core product technology platform for us, and we'll continue to innovate around that. You'll see new SKUs, you'll see changes and evolutions, but one thing that you can be rest assured of, we will continue to invest there. Just as it has gotten better every single year since it's been launched, we'll continue to do that. Control is another one where we continue to invest to make that better and improve all of that. So those are the core technology platforms where we'll always be investing. And so your own investments in those product platforms, will continue to give you new ROI and new benefits and features. So, but, we're pulling back a little bit on telling you about new black boxes until we get through the other side. But there are plenty of them coming. And it is pretty exciting. And it's so hard not to talk about all of it, but it's just the decision that's just where we are right now.
So you're saying we can't mention the new projector?
Oh,
geez.
I'm kidding. Wait, can we edit that?
Nope, I don't edit. If you listen to the show, I don't edit. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm kidding.
That's it. John's fired.
I don't want any of our partners to get upset. No, but look, Brad is right. We want to make sure we get everything shipped. But at Infocom, we talked about a brand new NVX that was software-based transmitter. Yep. I mean, that is kind of a neat and forward-looking innovation. We just announced a week or so ago, wireless conferencing being added to Air Media, or those capabilities. Maybe not too huge in the classroom to wirelessly conference and present, but definitely in the meeting rooms and the huddle spaces and all types of new learning spaces, we're going to see it. And some people will use it in the classroom. But the idea about intelligent video, just everything I think that's going on with that, because of hybrid learning and high flex learning and blended, you start having these camera technologies that are being integrated and improving on those technologies. I mean, I think about how we had camera operators and still do on important events, and now the AI that's integrated in some of the products we have is getting so advanced that it can track the professor walking around the room, even if a student walks right in front of it. So we have those some new lines of transmitters and receivers on the DM light line with some more USB transmission and so on. So there's stuff being introduced almost every day, and we've got a huge line. And while the absolute first priority is production and shipping and getting through the supply chain crisis, don't be fooled. We've got people working night and day. I think we're continuing to hire engineers to help, not just actually we're hiring them for supply chain help. So if products can be redesigned with a new chip or something like that, so we can get it out the door faster, there's that aspect. And then there's the people who are joining our company to work on new technology. So we're trying to fire on all cylinders.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think that one thing that we want to, with and going to what Randy has on here, thinking, how ordering for 2024, 25, and we're coming up on the end. So I want to start to wrap this up, but I want to kind of speak to that, to know the future. I just encourage everybody, don't get stuck on a SKU right now, right? Yes, we're back ordered on our SKUs and trying to get stuff in, but maybe as a vertical, it's time for us to start thinking ahead. What direction is technology going in, and how can we partner with our manufacturers, Crestron being one, but I would say across the board, and being able to now think, maybe if I'm having to wait a year or two, do I want to just have my classes and my classrooms and be in a different space at that point? Right. And just a different way of looking at our design. So maybe this is a chance for us to do that, and an excuse to do it too. Right. So I encourage that. So as we wrap up, there's an important part of being on Higher Ed AV. And that is, when you come onto the show, we have a rapid round of questions that come. Okay. There's no right or wrong answer unless I have an opinion of my own, in which case there could be a wrong answer. And so everyone gets the same first question, and so you didn't see this as if maybe you did see it was coming. Everyone gets the same first question. Higher ed is a very unique vertical. We are full of traditions, and think of college football Saturday, things like that. So to both of you, and John, you first, what is your favorite college tradition?
Ooh, my favorite college tradition. That's great. Tailgating. Tailgating before the football games, or take your pick of the sports. I mean, that's just a great time where everybody's around. And actually, we've hosted a couple of tailgating events at some of our A+ partners schools. So, I mean, that's got to be up there at least, if it's not the top.
Yep. That's actually the most popular answer. So very good. Right. Brad, for you, your favorite college tradition?
Mine is actually, while I'm not a huge sports fan, I am a University of Utah football fan.
I'm sorry. Let me kick him off of here. No.
Should have started
after last week,
Oh yeah, I know. Indeed. So no, it is. It's the football games, and then making a trek to the Rose Bowl when we're part of that. It's a really great time to be together as a family and with so many other fans. So I really love that kind of experience.
Yeah. All right. That's, still the popular answer. All right. I'm still a little hurt for this last weekend, but that's okay. All right. Next rapid round question. John, I believe you're in Indiana, right? That's where you're based on. So when I come visit you, where are we going to eat? Where are you taking me to dinner? Where are we going?
Well, there's always the old standby of like St. Elmo's, where great steaks, but the fire cocktail sauce is what they're known for on the shrimp cocktail. Shoot, man, there's some good ones. Actually, there's a new restaurant here called Provision, so we might try that one.
Provision. I like it. All right. All right. And steak and fire sauce on. Oh, I like it. Brad, where are we going when I come visit you?
I'd say
You're
too, Utah, we've got great mountains.
Utah.
So one is, of course, going to be High West Distillery in Park City,
Oh, yes.
makers of really incredible whiskeys and bourbons, and then great food to go along with it. And then, of course, Sundance just down the road a little bit further. Two great restaurants there, beautiful setting, really great food. So we'll go up there.
All right, I like it. I like it. Oh, we're gonna eat well. All right, then the same last question to everybody when they come on the show, and they just give me a minute moment. You get 1 minute of inspiration. Now you can take it to how you would like to what we can know as end users to help us out, or you can take it anywhere. I've had people talk about baseball, Craig. I mean, we've gone everywhere with this. Just give me a minute. So you get 1 minute ish. You don't have to use a whole minute unless you want to just give that moment of inspiration for the group. So John, you're up.
Okay. Actually, I'm going to share two little things and try to keep it under a minute. Number one is someone once mentioned to me that the greatest baseball player, the greatest hitter of all time, Ted Williams, had a 400 batting average or 400 plus, depending on how you look at it. But they said that what that means is that 5 or 6 at bats, the guy struck out or hit out, grounded out, flied out, whatever, and he was considered the greatest of all time. Who else would say if you fail 6 out of 10 times, you're the greatest of all time? But that's inspiring because we need to get comfortable with how things, if they're not working, and figure out how to get them to work. And the other one I was just going to say is what I touched on last week in our CCUMC quick discussion. I want all the AV groups at all of the colleges and universities to be elevated up to having a seat at the table on every new project, every refresh project, and in their schools and institutions to understand how important and how incredibly imperative it is to keep the technology working and up to date.
Great. Oh, I like that. Brad, you got a minute.
Really, first off and foremost is thank you all for being such a great community. It is true that this community is distinct from so many other customer groups, and I think it's really awesome. It's very motivating for me personally, because when I go to events like Masters, I have conversations like this. You all really care. You all are doing really interesting things with the technology that we produce. We're not like a boring old enterprise CRM kind of a world, right? Do you think that there are major technologies out there that don't have this kind of vibrant community that cares about sharing knowledge and information, helping each other out, and really pushing it forward? So I am really thrilled to be a part of this community and that we can contribute to it. And thank you for your partnership in showing that. Again, Masters this year was the first time I was there in person, and it was so mind-blowing to talk to some of you, hear some of the projects that you're doing, in all the unique ways that you're impacting individual people's lives, individual students and individual employees, setting them up for a long-term career. So thank you for being such a great community. And of course, thank you for your partnership with Crestron.
All right, that was inspiring. But I still, well, you could, at least you didn't go to University of Utah football back there. No, just kidding. No, all right. No, I would just want to say thank you guys. This is amazing. Just this opportunity to talk to you. Hopefully, I'm sure I'll see on the back end HIPMA and Hired AV stuff of how I did and what the feedback is. But I appreciate the fact that when I reached out to you and said, hey, we got to attack this and we need to come out and our people have questions, you said, great. How do you want it to be? And you threw it to me and said, let's figure out how to do it. So that's a kudos to you. And I thank you for that. I thank you for your support of Hired AV, that through and through. So just to that, I guess really quickly, you want to give the commercial for Crestron? How do people find information out about Crestron?
John?
Well, yeah, go to our site and, That's one of the easiest ways, but I hope that everybody already knows their local, A+ partner manager. And if they don't, email me at jhulen@crestron.com, and I'll make sure I put you in touch with the right person.
And you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can email me, bhintze@crestron.com. And of course, all of the normal Crestron channels, we're here to partner with you.
Great. Thank you guys so much for coming on. Thank you all. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Keep the conversation running. We're in this together. We're in for the long haul completely, both as a vertical and as partners here, our manufacturer partners and Crestron. Thank you for your support. Everyone can find me, of course, at Josiah Way on all of the socials, and you can find Higher Ed AV at Higher Ed AV on all the socials. Visit higheredav.com for all of your higher ed news and everything and all of that stuff. Likewise, we have this webinar series continuing. We have another one coming up next month. We have X10 following after that. We're going to talk, as you know, back to Higher Ed AV now has a consulting wing. So if you want help planning for the future, come and reach out and let us be that liaison for you all. And last but not least, we will be live. We are bringing an entourage out to ISE doing booth tours. If you're a manufacturer on here, we're going to do some booth tours, some videos, and come and bring ISE live to you via Higher Ed AV. So it'll be good. That's coming up. Things to look forward to. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, John. Thank you, Brad. Have a good one.
Thanks, Joe. Take care.
See you. See ya.
Thanks.
And I'm just going to hit end, and I will see you all. Thank you. Bye.